Good morning. The Senate Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions Committee will please come to order. Today we are holding a hearing on how we can strengthen our nation's workforce programs in light of the jobs crisis caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. Ranking Member Burr and I will each have an opening statement, and then Senator Burr and I will introduce today's witnesses. After the witnesses give their testimony, senators will each have 5 minutes for a round of questions. Before we begin, I do want to walk through the COVID-19 safety protocols in place today. We will follow the advice of the attending physician and the Sergeant at Arms in conducting this hearing. We're all very grateful to our clerks and everyone who's worked hard to get this set up and to help everyone stay safe and healthy. Committee members are seated at least 6 feet apart, and some senators are participating by video conference. And while we are unable to have the hearing fully open to the public or media for in-person attendance, live video is available on our committee website at help.senate.gov. And if you are in need of accommodations, including closed captioning, you can reach out to the committee or the Office of Congressional Accessibility Services. We are here today because our nation is in the middle of the most unequal jobs crisis in modern history. Millions of people have lost jobs they relied on to put food on the table, keep a roof over their heads, pay their bills, and afford a post-secondary education. And some estimates suggest at least a third of COVID-related job loss will be permanent. Millions of people have also been forced out of the workforce, including by issues like our nation's shortage of quality, affordable childcare. And millions of workers are struggling. We know a disproportionately high number have been women, people of color, people with disabilities, and people in rural communities. This is not a problem that's going to fix itself, not in Washington State, not in North Carolina, not anywhere. Because while the people facing the worst rates of unemployment and underemployment are those who are paid the lowest wages, a recent study suggests future job growth will be mainly in higher wage occupations, meaning workers will need access to greater competencies and skills to have more opportunities for employment. For example, with so many businesses adapting their operations and service models as a result of the pandemic, the demand for digital skills has accelerated. Yet, according to the National Skills Coalition, at least 48 million Americans lack foundational digital skills. But the problem isn't simply about helping employers find skilled workers. It's about providing workers new opportunities, tearing down barriers, helping people find quality jobs that lead to economic self-sufficiency. While it is important the workforce system adapts to the needs of employers, this cannot be the only focus. We must provide workers with pathways to good jobs and support lifelong learning opportunities. That is why our nation's workforce programs are so important. Apprenticeship and other job training programs can help people stay competitive and grow in the careers they have, or develop new skills, start new careers. But we have to make sure these programs are truly working for working families. That means providing services and support people need to get into training programs and stay in them, like childcare to help them manage a busy family schedule, or financial support to help cover costs associated with an education or training program. It means tearing down barriers that can make these programs hardest to reach for those who most need them, like formerly incarcerated people, people who have been unemployed for a long time, youth who are neither in school nor participating in the labor market. It means making sure we're really reaching the people who are struggling the most by accounting for longstanding inequities in the workforce. We also have to keep in mind the ultimate goal here is economic security for workers and families, which isn't just about how quickly people can get trained and get jobs, but how good that training is and the quality of jobs associated with that training. It's about making sure workers are getting good wages and benefits, making sure they have the data and guidance they need to make informed decisions, helping workers get credentials that are portable and relevant if they decide to look for another job, and preparing them for fields where there is high demand like STEM, clean energy, manufacturing, and infrastructure, fields where President Biden is also proposing significant investments, and healthcare and public health sectors in which the pandemic has worsened longstanding shortages. I know in my home state, tribal hospitals are understaffed, and some rural counties lack an adequate number of healthcare providers, underscoring the need for far more primary care physicians, nurses, and specialists in fields like behavioral health, oral health, women's health, and pediatrics. To tackle all of these challenges and strengthen our workforce the way we need to, we also have to make fundamental investments like the $15 billion to support workforce training programs I called for in my Relaunching America's Workforce Act, and the $100 billion for workforce development programs President Biden called for in his American Jobs Plan. We have a lot of work ahead of us to respond to this pandemic and the current job crisis, and a lot at stake for families in my home state of Washington and across the country who are counting on us to make sure workers who have been set back by this pandemic have the opportunity to get new skills, new jobs, and economic security. I'll also say for me, this is really personal. One of the reasons my family was able to make it through hard times was because my mom was able to go back to school, get training, and ultimately a higher paying job, and it made a huge difference for us. So many families today have had the rug completely pulled out from under them, and I want to make sure people in Washington State and across the country have that same opportunity. And I'm optimistic about what this committee can accomplish together. We've got a bipartisan track record on workforce issues, like when we passed the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act in 2014, and when we reauthorized the Perkins Career and Technical Education Act in 2018. I know my colleagues on the committee on both sides of the aisle are focused on this important issue. So I really feel we've got an opportunity to come together, get this done, and help workers across the country. So I look forward to working with my colleagues to listen to the stakeholders, look at common sense solutions, and build on our bipartisan track record here in the months ahead. And with that, I will recognize Ranking Member Burr for his opening remarks.
Good morning, Madam Chairman, and I want to thank you for working with me to schedule this hearing. I'm glad we're working together in a bipartisan effort to modernize our workforce programs, and I hope the Democrat leadership will stop their threats to use partisan reconciliation bills and commit to listening to Republican ideas, working together as we're doing on this committee. I want to thank our witnesses, both those that are here in person and those that are here virtually. Today, we're here to discuss the state of the American workforce. COVID-19 has changed a lot about the way we live, including the way we learn and the way we work. Before the pandemic, our economy was booming, jobs were available, and unemployment was at a 50-year low. Today, a year later, nearly 10 million people are out of work, and unemployment is at 6%, and some suggest 9%. At the same time, as of today, more than 84.3 million Americans have been fully vaccinated. By May, every American who wants a vaccine should be able to get one. And I suspect very soon our bigger problem is going to be convincing people to get a vaccine rather than a concern about the supply. If we want to return to a booming economy, we need to plan to get there. As part of that plan, we need to make sure we have better systems in place that are equipped to connect job seekers, employers, and education opportunities. Last month, Chair Murray and I asked the public to send in ideas for this committee to consider to strengthen workforce development and job training. I thank the Chair for joining me in this call to action and for her commitment to address these issues in a bipartisan way. As we begin these discussions on how best to help America's workers get the skills they need, we have to look at what we've already done and what new ideas we need to include. We can start with the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act. This is our country's primary law focused on workforce development, and it's due to be reauthorized. We need to take this opportunity to see how this important law can be updated to meet the needs of workers and employers. So what does that look like? We need to be innovative. More bureaucracy and paperwork is not the answer. We have to look at the system as a whole and make sure it's equipped to meet the demands of 2021 and beyond. If we just add another layer of requirements to an already complex system and call it a day, we haven't done our job. If we want these programs to prepare people for good jobs, employers need to have a seat at the table. If training programs do not teach anyone the skills employers are actually looking for, then we haven't really helped anyone. We need to make sure that this law fosters strong collaboration between public and private sector. Job seekers should know that if they go to a one-stop center, they'll get the assistance they need to find a good job. Employers should know that if they need skilled workers, the workforce system can help. Last year, state and local workforce boards had to respond to the pandemic and quickly adapt to a world where virtual services became the norm. These systems should be able to rapidly respond to meet the needs of their community, and we need to make sure that the law supports that responsiveness. Many members of this committee are also interested in expanding apprenticeship programs. The apprenticeship model is a great way for individuals to earn a wage while learning an in-demand skill. Unfortunately, many employers are unable to access the federal system because of red tape and rules that favor labor unions. We saw a glimpse of the type of innovation we need through the Department of Labor's rule on industry-recognized apprenticeship programs that was issued by the previous administration. This policy can expand these apprenticeship models to include more industries and provide new opportunities for training. To build on this idea, a bipartisan apprenticeship bill will need to find a way to support both traditional registered apprenticeship programs and programs that are developed and recognized by industry. I understand that there are important conversations to be had about accountability and quality for industry-recognized apprenticeship programs, and quite frankly, I welcome that. For example, we should look to work done with our military veterans and how we've successfully helped veterans leave the military with training from the military and test out state-based occupational licensing standards and be certified for occupational licensure in that state. In 2018's Department of Defense bill, we create a pathway for military-trained medics to ease into civilian life more efficiently without having to jump through a lot of unnecessary hoops. So we need all the tools in our toolbox to get people back to work, and above all, approach is appropriate. But that does not mean we need to create a variety of new programs. The federal government already has dozens of training programs across multiple federal agencies. We need to take a look at how we can improve and better align these programs, not just add a new layer of programs and mandates so that state and local leaders, employers, and job seekers can reap the maximum benefits. Workforce development has been and should continue to be a space with bipartisan solutions. 2014, Congress achieved a bipartisan victory when the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act was signed into law. We saw the same effort in 2018 with the reauthorization of Perkins Career and Technical Education Act. I know this committee and this chamber can achieve the same success this year. Bipartisan solutions exist to all of these problems. Today's hearing is the first step to finding them. This is just the beginning of the conversation. We all have a big task ahead of us. I look forward to working with our witnesses, the chair, our colleagues to get our workforce programs up to speed and our country back to work. I thank the chair for her indulgence.
Thank you, Ranking Member Burr. We will now introduce today's witnesses. I'm very pleased to start by welcoming Maria Flynn. Ms. Flynn is the President and CEO of Jobs for the Future, a national nonprofit that is focused on the American workforce and education systems. Former member of the Senior Executive Service in the U.S. Department of Labor and a national authority on the future of labor, the role of technology in the labor market, career pathways for underserved individuals, and employer engagement. Ms. Flynn, thank you for joining us today. Welcome. Next, I'd like to introduce Denise Thomas. Ms. Thomas is the Deputy Commissioner of Workforce Learning and Development for the Tennessee Department of Labor and Workforce Development, the State Workforce Liaison for the National Governors Association, and serves as Vice Chair of the Employment and Training Committee for the National Association of State Workforce Agencies. Welcome, Ms. Thomas. We're glad to have you with us today. Next, I will turn it over to Ranking Member Burr, who will introduce Dr. Scott Rawls.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm pleased to welcome Dr. Scott Rawls to our hearing today. Dr. Rawls serves as president of Wake Technical Community College in Raleigh, North Carolina. Wake Tech is North Carolina's largest community college with 70,000 students, 6 campuses, and a variety of online learning options. Wake Tech offers over 200 degrees, diplomas, and certificates, as well as other short-term programs to prepare students for in-demand careers. As president, Dr. Rawls has led efforts to support students' success and further Wake Tech's impact on economic development in the region by increasing employer engagement, developing stackable credentials and degree pathways, and creating the Wake Works apprenticeship program. Previous, Dr. Rawls served as president of Northern Virginia Community College and, I might say, Madam Chairman, as president of the North Carolina Community College System. Scott, I look forward to your testimony today. I thank you for being here.
Thank you, Dr. Rawls. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. Finally, I'd like to introduce Alejandro Mendoza. Mr. Mendoza is the Human Resources Manager for Optimax Systems, Inc. of Rochester, New York, and was recently appointed to serve on a national manufacturing panel that will advise the Biden administration on its Made in All of America initiative. Mr. Mendoza, thank you for joining us today. With that, we will begin our testimony, and Ms. Flynn, we will begin with you if you'd like to give your opening statement.
Good morning, Chairwoman Murray, Ranking Member Burr, and members of the committee. My name is Maria Flynn. I'm President and CEO of Jobs for the Future. We're a national nonprofit organization that has worked for nearly 40 years to drive change in America's workforce and education systems to promote economic advancement for all, especially underrepresented individuals. This past year has been devastating for America's workers, with over 40 million U.S. workers losing their jobs and financial ground since the start of the pandemic. While last month's unemployment numbers are trending down, we still have 9.7 million workers who remain unemployed, 4 million more Americans who are out of work now than in February 2020. And these numbers do not reflect those who have dropped out of the labor market completely or who are working part-time or in low-wage jobs. Probably most devastating is the fact that the workers who are suffering the greatest economic hardships as a result of the crisis are low-wage earners and individuals with no post-secondary credentials, many of whom are Black, Latinx, Indigenous, or from other underrepresented populations. Women have also been disproportionately hurt by the crisis, losing jobs at far higher rates than men. When COVID hit last March, our education and workforce systems were caught flat-footed, unprepared for the sudden dramatic economic downturn. While we may hope that this is a once-in-a-lifetime crisis, the pandemic has exposed how critical it is to be prepared for the worst while keeping up with the rapid pace of change in our economy. Even in times of low unemployment, we must build and scale solutions that prepare workers today for the demands of tomorrow. The U.S. needs a workforce ecosystem that is modern, agile, equitable, resilient, and innovative enough to keep up with the skill needs of individuals and in-demand employers alike. It is what all of our people deserve. To make that a reality, Congress should take a holistic approach to looking at the existing array of programs and how they can be modernized and streamlined. The U.S. has an array of post-secondary education, skills training, and workforce development programs that provide vital education and employment services for America's workers. These programs and institutions have worked hard to adapt throughout the pandemic, but these systems were built in large part for a different era, are not adequately funded nor agile enough to fully meet the needs of America's workforce, especially in today's turbulent economy. The federal government last made significant changes to the nation's primary workforce development system in 2014 through the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, or WIOA. However, the system has not been adequately funded, nor is it currently designed to meet the extensive needs of the nation's workforce. The WIOA system is responsible for a wide range of functions, from the direct provision of services to job seekers and employers through our nation's one-stop career centers, to arranging for skills training to the extent resources are available. Workforce boards are also responsible for convening system partners in support of comprehensive service delivery in communities and for engaging with employers and system stakeholders in support of strategic initiatives, including career pathways and sector strategies. Successful WIOA programs are doing this well. However, the system's limited resources are spread very thin. Performance across the more than 500 local workforce areas varies, and the entire workforce system needs significant modernization. We need a workforce system that is adequately funded. In FY21, funding for WIOA's dislocated worker program was just $1.3 billion for the entire country. The total for WIOA adults, youth, and dislocated workers combined was just $3.6 billion. In comparison, funding for Pell Grants is close to $30 billion, but cannot fund many short-term workforce-oriented programs. To address the nation's training needs, we would like to see significant increase in funding for skills training through WIOA, an expansion of Pell to include high-quality short-term credentialing programs, and exploration of other funding mechanisms such as income share agreements. Of equal importance to increase investments are critical changes to the ecosystem, such as a robust and expansive career navigation system for students, job seekers, and workers that is offered through an in-person and virtual service options, a lifelong learning system that is easily accessible where the structure and delivery of education and skills training is transformed so that training is accelerated, adoption of evidence-based strategies, including sector focus and career pathways systems, and the creation of grants to community college systems for the scaling of models such as those tested under the TACT program, modernization of the system using full use of the latest digital technologies to expand and improve service delivery for participants, strong ability to meet the needs of diverse populations, including opportunity youth who are dislocated from school and employment, as well as people of color who have been exceptionally hard hit by the pandemic. And we must find authentic ways to incorporate worker voice in the design of systems and programs. And finally, deep partnership with employers and other key stakeholders to leverage resources, extend capacity, and provide an expanded array of service. Thank you for the opportunity to testify before the committee. The American Workforce Development System is a crucial piece of our country's economic mobility puzzle. However, at present, it is undervalued, underfunded, and in need of modernization. We urge you to invest in and consider changes holistically so the nation's workforce system can meet the complex needs of today and the future.
Thank you very much. Ms. Thomas, we'll turn to you.
Good morning. Thank you, Chairwoman Murray, Ranking Member Burr, and members of the committee for inviting me to speak today. My name is Denise Thomas, and I serve as Deputy Commissioner of Workforce and Learning for the Tennessee Department of Labor and Workforce Development. Tennessee, like most states across the country, has experienced disruption in the workforce as a result of the pandemic. Whereas our most recent unemployment rate of 5% looks promising, we recognize there are challenges that exist outside of the official numbers. Also, unlike the Great Recession, when jobs were more scarce in our state, we have a significant amount of jobs available to Tennesseans. Currently, over 250,000 jobs remain unfilled in our jobs database. However, as vaccination rates increase and hopefully overall conditions improve, we are seeing a real push to re-engage sideline workers. In order to bridge the divide between those needing and wanting quality jobs and employers who desire skilled workers, we must collaborate with other workforce agencies and partners to provide comprehensive services, both in the American Job Centers and community access points across the state to include mobile units. We officially launched the Tennessee Virtual American Job Center in December of last year in order to maintain connectivity to our citizens even when our physical doors cannot be open due to the pandemic. This service model is key in advancing opportunities for all. We must continue to work with human services agencies to create, collect, and share common intake information in order to best identify and coordinate eligibility for appropriate programs and services that meet the overall needs of the individual and their family. The availability of these services outside the traditional walls of the American One-Stop System has helped to expand access for many Tennesseans, as have many pandemic-era programs that rely on more remote service delivery. Given the workforce vulnerability of minority workers across certain industry sectors, individualized and equitable access must continue to be broadened to ensure workers most at risk for job loss or disruption can participate in training programs that offer the best path to connect to high demand and high wage employment opportunities. This includes an expansion of worker supports such as access to high quality childcare, transportation, and broadband. This work will be strengthened by our partners at the federal level by further aligning policies, eligibility and benefit structures, regulation, state plan requirements, and performance metrics across systems. Employing integrated approaches will bolster and support evidence-based outcomes for several workforce, human services, and education programs. We continue to forge ahead with ways to provide access to quality workforce and education training to those incarcerated. In partnership with our Tennessee Board of Regents and Department of Corrections, we're offering a unique virtual technology platform that offers instruction, career exploration, and skills assessment prior to release. Whereas Tennessee has had some success with education partners, namely adult education, career and technical education, and those at the post-secondary level, we recommend policymakers ensure all future investments in infrastructure around education, public health, and transportation are inclusive of the public workforce system to ensure holistic and overall outcomes for those we serve. One such example is our soon-to-be-released summer work experience. This is a project modeled for in-school and out-of-school youth that will support work-based education as well as the expansion of pre-apprenticeship and apprenticeship opportunities. Our Apprenticeship Tennessee initiative has experienced nearly 30% growth in the number of registered apprenticeships over the last year despite the pandemic. Another highlight is our Reconnect the Workforce project that was launched last year. This is a cooperative effort between the Tennessee Higher Education Commission and the Tennessee Department of Labor and Workforce Development to design a data sharing initiative in order to facilitate access to post-secondary education for unemployment claimants and adult education students in targeted sectors. By leveraging the tuition-free Tennessee Reconnect program for adult learners, our organizations could utilize resources to create a suite of services to address barriers to post-secondary credential attainment. During initial rollout of the program, we reached over 500,000 individuals. These examples of state-level coordination can lead to sustainable and scalable models throughout our entire system. And it is the spirit we all need as we emerge from the pandemic. However, public workforce here in Tennessee and at large will need sustainable and flexible funding options to continue to support both emergent and incumbent workers. Investments must be consistent over time to allow for maneuverability to address needs as they arise, as opposed to reactive and restricted funding that hinders states' ability to plan and execute as needed. The public workforce system will continue to play a vital role in economic and workforce recovery by providing access to training opportunities to individuals desiring reskilling or upskilling opportunities through traditional and work-based education. When positioned well, programs and services within the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act can provide foundational economic stability and drive good labor market incomes for all. Thank you for the opportunity to share.
Thank you. Dr. Rawls.
Good morning, Chairman Murray, Ranking Member Burr, and members of the committee. I'm very honored to be with you today. Our college, Wake Technical Community College, takes particular pride in the community part of our name, and this challenging past year has sharpened even more our community emphasis. A year ago this month, we quickly moved every course and service we provide online. And since that time, we've been safely nudging back to normalcy. A majority of our students work. You could say colleges like ours are the colleges of essential workers, and our role in that regard has been clear, beginning with the physical reopening of our public safety and health sciences campuses last June. Since that time, 136 nursing graduates have moved directly to the healthcare front lines, and our pharmacy tech students have been trained for vaccine delivery. And like all community colleges, our students are more likely to come from working and lower income families and also to be classified as non-traditional. This year has been particularly non-traditional for them. The working student who is also the essential clerk in the grocery checkout line, the student parent who is also serving as a teacher at home. To address these greater challenges, we've amplified our communications, accelerated and expanded our student supports, and tried to serve where we can as a lifeline for our community. In the fall, we waived all our student fees to give our students a financial break, and as of this week, we will have distributed emergency financial aid to over 12,000 students at an average award amount of $700, provided $125 grocery gift cards to over 4,300 students, and distributed over 1,200 free laptops. At the onset of the pandemic, we scooped up all our existing PPE, donating 74,000 gloves, 3,000 masks, our only ventilator, and other supplies to our hospitals. We raised $194,000 in private funds for grants to local small businesses started through our launch entrepreneurship programs. And today, one of our campuses serves as a site where 1,800 people per week are receiving vaccination, and we're providing free job training to individuals in our community economically impacted by COVID in 21 in-demand job areas. And as we've reached the one-year COVID anniversary, we're extremely grateful for the federal, the state, the county resources, the private donations that enabled us to earn our stripes this year as our community's college. While we're keeping our eye on the ball with respect to safety, we're excited to be reaching this transition, as I believe the road to economic recovery and workforce opportunity is running right through the middle of America's community colleges. In no way is this a new role for our college, and in the year leading up to the pandemic, we were already framing our role as our region's largest ladder college and furthering the practice of what we'll sometimes refer to as ladder economics. Here's what we briefly mean by that. The region we serve, the Research Triangle, is a high-tech hub that's blessed by economic opportunity and significant population growth and job growth. And our region's strong universities serve as a talent magnet for individuals from around our state, our country, and our world. However, we've not been as strong a talent ladder. Economic analysis indicate that despite the richness of the opportunities, we lag in economic mobility, meaning if you grow up poor in our region, the chances of remaining poor as an adult are higher than in some other metropolitan areas. That significant challenge has only been exacerbated this year by the pandemic, and at Wake Tech, we're taking that on as a unique mission to change that. One way we attempt to do that is by not forcing upon our students a choice between skills and degrees. Training often leads to the necessary skills that are required to get a job. Too often, they do not connect to the degree pathways that are necessary for career promotion, like a ladder with only the bottom rungs. And many higher education degree pathways are like a ladder with only the top rungs, unreachable for many people who need to work so they can continue higher education to prepare for a lifelong career. At Wake Tech, we're sharpening our focus on the development and alignment of each rung, the ladders leading to career opportunity, as well as the vital partnerships, employer partnerships, educational partnerships, workforce system partnerships that form the vital planks that connect the rungs of the ladder together. In my written testimony, I gave examples of that in terms of our information and biotechnology pathways. Some of the rungs of the ladder, they're important: frequent and meaningful employer engagement, data-infused career development, training opportunities providing both a foothold to a job with industry certifications, recognized industry certifications, and footholds to degrees with prior learning credit, coordinated high school pathways, CTE, dual enrollment, early colleges, stackable community college degrees, second chance recovery efforts, strategic university partnerships, plus-up training for degree holders for lifetime learning, and well-developed apprenticeship and work-based learning opportunities. There are several opportunities for the federal government to further development of meaningful career ladders at America's community colleges, which I believe are the backbone of workforce development and at the heart of creating career ladders. Extending federal financial aid eligibility to students and workers enrolled in short-term programs, authorizing a community college-led training program that provides meaningful funding for the development and initiation of career ladders in high-demand job areas, establishing education and training innovation funds of the Departments of Labor and Education, and strengthening the federal apprenticeship policies. Thank you again for this opportunity to participate in today's hearing, and I look forward to the discussion generated by your questions.
Thank you very much, and we will now turn to Mr. Mendoza.
Good morning, Chairwoman Murray, Ranking Member Burr, and distinguished members of the committee. Thank you for convening today's hearing. My name is Alejandro Mendoza, and it's an honor for me to be here today to testify and to share my experience as a private sector employee. Optimax Systems is a precision optics manufacturer located in upstate Western New York. We were founded in 1991 and have grown to become America's largest precision optics manufacturer. We manufacture high-end lenses to customer-supplied specifications for research and industry. So organizations such as NASA use our lenses for high-quality imaging systems that can be found on the Mars rovers and the International Space Station. We have approximately 400 employees, including hundreds of skilled technicians, each of whom are artisans that have had to learn the skills required to produce a precision lens from start to finish. Fundamentally, our technicians need to have basic math and computer skills to manufacture the lenses by using computer-controlled machinery and metrology instruments, and they must be able to work within teams. And once we bring on a technician, they begin our formal on-the-job learning process that includes both hands-on and classroom training. In the end, our goal is to create a profitable company that provides good jobs and career opportunities for our employees and prosperity for our region. And we do this by investing in emerging technology, by investing in workers to ensure that they have the needed skills, and by sharing our wealth with our employees. However, one of the greatest challenges is that we struggle to find workers necessary to grow the business and to fulfill our customer orders, and we know we're not alone. In New York, 49% of jobs require skills training beyond high school, but not a 4-year degree. But too few of New York's workers, just 37%, have had access to the skills training necessary to fill these in-demand careers. And the current crisis has only exacerbated this challenge. Over the past year at Optimax, our business demand has continued to grow, but we've only been able to hire 13 employees compared to our needs of 30 to 40. So our workforce strategies around recruiting, training, and retaining our workforce has been heavily stressed. And the strategies in which we invest the most amount of time and energy fit into 2 key categories. One's collaboration through industry or sector partnerships, as well as extensive in-house training and development. Our engagement in industry partnerships within our community to scale best practices has been vital. With our partners, we've shared best practices to recruiting and training skilled workers. We've worked to direct curriculum development at community colleges. We've engaged hundreds of students in recareering adults by providing facility tours, internships, and job shadow opportunities. We've conducted outreach in the community. We've sponsored and hosted network events and created educational tools and information to support the advanced manufacturing sector. But in addition to industry partnerships, we've incorporated continuous on-the-job and classroom learning for our existing workers. We prioritize opportunities for employees to learn on the job through several structured worker training programs, including a registered apprenticeship program, tuition-supported upskilling, and customized tutoring for technical skills development, corporate culture, and leadership fundamentals. At Optimax, we provide our workforce with on average about 1,000 hours of training each month. And additionally, during any given semester, we have between 20 and 25 employees enrolled in courses at our local community and technical colleges. So Optimax is committed to investing in our workers and community, but we also need Congress to be our partner in this. Congress can do this by ensuring public support for partnerships that bring together small and mid-sized companies, community and technical colleges, and the public workforce systems. The Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act currently supports these industry or sector partnerships, but provides no dedicated resources to empower states and local areas to invest in this strategy. Dedicated resource to support industry partnerships through WIOA reauthorization, the National Apprenticeship Act reauthorization, and any response or recovery to the current crisis allows Optimax to better support our training programs. Advanced manufacturing businesses like Optimax need you to invest aggressively and effectively in the skills that industries demand and workers need to be competitive in a global marketplace, an idea over 80% of voters do support. To be the most effective to Optimax, these investments would also support costs of providing incumbent worker training and of helping our workers enhance their digital skills. Investing in incumbent worker training like the type Optimax supports would help us and our workers meet different skill needs, like the technological changes we saw during COVID. And finally, better aligning post-secondary policy with industrial demand and worker need would revolutionize our capacity to upskill and reskill our workers. If Congress expanded financial aid to anyone seeking skills training, students in high-quality short-term training programs, and not just those seeking traditional college degrees, Optimax could offer career progression for even more workers than we do today. I thank you kindly for your time and dedication to ensuring the strength of America's workforce.
Thank you very much. Thank you to all of our witnesses for your excellent testimony. I would also like to note that we've received a letter from the National Urban League regarding the topic of today's hearing, and I ask unanimous consent. This letter is entered into the record, so ordered. With that, we will now begin a round of 5-minute questions. I ask all of our colleagues to keep track of your clock and stay within those 5 minutes. Again, thank you to all of you for your testimony. Ms. Flynn, I'll start with you. Thank you. Workers who are paid low wages have felt the worst of this impact from the pandemic, and we are seeing disproportionately high levels of unemployment and underemployment among women and communities of color. Additionally, people with disabilities have experienced significant rates of job loss associated with this economic downturn. So as we build back our economy, we have to make sure that our most vulnerable populations are part of the economic recovery and no one is left behind. I wanted to ask you, how can we ensure that all workers have a pathway to long-term economic self-sufficiency?
Absolutely, Senator, and I completely agree. It is low-wage workers, people of color, women, individuals with disabilities who have been hit the hardest. And I think in response to that, we need to consider how we truly put equity at the center of our recovery efforts and how we really do that in a proactive manner. And so first, I would say an investment in skills training is critical. So more investment, I would say, across the board, including expansion of Pell for short-term credentials. I would say it's really enhancing outreach efforts and making it easier for individuals who have been adversely affected by the pandemic to access the services that they need. So really looking to see how to enhance kind of the digital transformation of the public workforce system, looking at how to enhance career navigation so that individuals as well as the staff at the American Job Centers can provide better information. And then I would also say, looking at the reporting requirements of the statute to ensure that we are collecting the type of disaggregated data that's necessary to be able to track the outcomes of these individuals over time.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Ms. Thomas, you mentioned the importance of additional support for people in training programs like childcare, transportation, broadband accessibility. Those are challenges I hear a lot about in my home state of Washington. And in the coming weeks, Congress is going to consider additional ways to help people who have lost their jobs as a result of this pandemic, and that may include additional supports for workforce training programs. And we need to make sure people are not only able to access these training opportunities, but are able to complete them as well. So can you elaborate for us on why supportive services like childcare and career navigation are important for participants in workforce training programs?
Yes, and thank you, Senator, excuse me, for your question. Absolutely. Oftentimes with access to skills training or post-secondary education comes with the consideration for most of those seeking it on how will my children be taken care of, or how will I afford some of the additional supports that come along. So by expanding worker supports to ensure that there's no question that there's childcare available to individuals who are looking to not just begin their matriculation toward a degree and or credential, but also completion is vital. This could be done, particularly under the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, by expanding funding to allow us to really create a suite of services. So when someone is interested in going to school or reskilling, we can talk about how all of these supports come together to really mitigate barriers to completion. We found this works very well for those who are looking, particularly first generation students or those who have been out of the education space for some time. If we can address the challenges before entering, it helps that person in completing. Additionally, with the expansion of the fiscal investments into worker support, it allows us to help individuals during the career exploration and navigation phase to really dream of opportunities that are not always available to them when they're considering what is my next path, particularly for those who have been sidelined during the pandemic and those who are currently in entry-level positions. So worker supports are vital as we continue to have these conversations.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Thank you very much for that. Senator Burr, I'll turn it to you.
Scott, what does employer engagement look like on your campus, and how do you design programs that meet the specific needs of the employer?
Well, it means many things, but it means that every one of our applied workforce degrees has a very active advisory committee made up of the employers of our community telling us what the skills should be. It means for me personally, I rarely have a day when I'm not engaging with at least one employer or more about career ladders. So for all of us, it's a full engagement sport in terms of employer engagement, primarily because we want for our students to have those job opportunities that exist in our community. And it also means for us working very closely with our employers to define those ladders, as I was talking about, starting from skills training, how those build into our degree programs, how our degree programs stack, and where we partner, so such as our university partners. So it's all the way around, and it's all of us involved.
And how much counsel with a future student of Wake Community College goes into trying to direct them on a path that you've got employer pools that are anxious to hire?
Yeah. frankly not enough, and that's why we're working on it right now. And we have to look at new models. For instance, as I mentioned, infusing data into our career development. So students are becoming more and more. They don't need to always sit in front of a counselor, but they need direction in terms of where some of that information is, what some of the job opportunities are, how many postings, what the wage levels are, and what are the steps getting to from one place to the next. And that's what we're striving at Wake Tech to accomplish.
I want to ask you a little tougher question. You can dance around it if you want to. Should the faculty at today's community colleges be mandated to be vaccinated?
Well, we don't believe in mandates, but we certainly encourage everyone to. I don't think we're going to get to normalcy unless we're all vaccinated. So I'd like to think we wouldn't have to mandate. But if we had to mandate, I would, because I think we are, at community colleges, the ultimate essential workers for getting the workforce back on track. So if that's what it would take, then I would say yes. But I don't think with most of our faculty that'll be required.
Yeah, I think just as a general statement, your response is probably the response of faculty. It's probably the response of teachers in K through 12. I find it somewhat odd that we mandate that students, before they attend K through 12, are required to have vaccinations for certain things, but all of a sudden, mandatory vaccinations as it relates to COVID is something that doesn't seem achievable. Mr. Mendoza, can you speak more about your engagement with community colleges, specifically how you've worked with them and worked to develop programs to meet the needs of that employer?
Yes, good morning. Thank you. We've engaged with the community college systems on a lot of different levels. A lot of our technicians are non-traditional students. I'm talking about gamers, artists, musicians, chefs, fine arts, and we have partnered with the community college to not just focus on their technical programs, but also their non-technical programs. And the community college has embraced us going in to continue to communicate and educate their students, and also recruits and provide opportunities for those students to see different career paths that they didn't necessarily think would be an opportunity when they started, but we found has very good direct correlation to the type of work that we do. So the willingness for the community colleges to understand that there may be non-traditional pathways that local industry can utilize their students from has been very well received. We partner very regularly on numerous advisory boards, but we also work within the corporate college system within our community college to do a couple of things. The facilitation of grants, workforce development grants, upskilling grants has been really important to us, as well as the creation of customized grants specifically for both our business as well as other partners as part of our industry partnerships.
Thank you for that. Ms. Flynn, just real quickly, because you raised the question of Pell Grants, and I think we all share the need to fund better. Does it concern you at all that valuable Pell dollars currently are being given to student athletes in higher education who are on full scholarship? Their education, their room and board, everything's paid for, their books, their laundry, and that they're pocketing Pell money because they technically qualify for it and it's not going for the students that actually could benefit from it. Does that burn you up a bit?
I'm not familiar with the issue, but that does concern me, yes.
Good. Thank you. Thank you, Chairman.
Senator Casey.
Thanks very much, Chair Murray. I want to start with Ms. Thomas on a question relating to community health workers. We know that, Ms. Thomas, in your testimony, you emphasized the need for training programs that offer a path to high demand, high wage employment opportunities. The healthcare sector offers many such opportunities, and within it, community health workers are critical, but often under-resourced. An under-resourced part of the workforce. These workers, as you know better than I, live in and represent communities they serve. They build trusted relationships with community members over time. And we all know that during the pandemic, we've seen the importance of culturally appropriate health education and outreach by trusted community members to address health inequities. I'm told by my staff that randomized controlled trials that were conducted at the University of Pennsylvania has shown that community health workers serving individuals with chronic illnesses save our healthcare system both money and improve outcomes, and those results are important to emphasize. So as we move into this, what we hope will be a full recovery from the pandemic, we should continue to build our community health workforce to achieve more inclusive, high-value healthcare. Here's my question. How are states and community colleges helping to train this workforce and build this workforce a promising career path?
Senator, thank you for your question, and I could not agree more around the value of our community health workers. And in our state in particular, I think this is where apprenticeship is really at its best, is to really look at where those needs exist and how we can really explore what in some means would be non-traditional means to help community health workers by engaging in pre-apprenticeship and apprenticeship opportunities. This not only gives individuals an opportunity to really step forward and do work that is vital to the recovery of our country from the pandemic, but also in a meaningful career that will give them the in-demand experience, that will give them the high wages, that obviously could really change the trajectory of that person's individual career and their family. So I would argue that apprenticeships is a viable option for that, and we are exploring that in our state, and I'm certain other states are doing that as well.
Thanks very much. I wanted to move to a question for Ms. Flynn and Dr. Rawls on community colleges. We know that in 2019, a report by the Jane Institute found that more than 10 million Americans live in public education deserts, and that these deserts tend to include low-income communities. In my home state of Pennsylvania, we currently have 14 community colleges, but that means that 29 counties in our state have zero facilities. They don't have access to a community college, at least not by way of something being proximate. Folks who live in those areas have to travel great distances, obviously, and I've prepared legislation that would help close these, reduce the number of these education deserts by providing resources to help community colleges or state and local governments establish community colleges or expand an existing community college into an underserved area. Ms. Flynn, can you discuss how expanding community colleges into underserved communities could impact students who live in those communities and also promote equity?
Yeah, absolutely, Senator. So I would say definitely looking at how to expand coverage of community colleges into those areas is critical, and also seeing if there are opportunities for community colleges to partner with other high-quality providers, whether those be online providers or some of the kind of newer, non-traditional providers that we see coming into the market. So I think kind of a combination of expansion of coverage combined with new strategic partnerships could be really interesting to pursue.
Thanks very much. And Dr. Rawls, I know that in your testimony you talked about the role that your institution plays for both students as well as the community. How do you think creating community college presence in these underserved areas would help spur economic development?
Well, I think physical presence is vital. Within every part of North Carolina, you're within 30 miles of a community college campus. But what's even more important is being present in these communities. And that's why within our particular college, we're targeting that as part of our strategic plan, identifying with our county the vulnerable economic regions health in terms of economic health, and then going into those regions for more proactive outreach to help bring students into our college and support them when they're with us at our college.
Thanks very much.
Thank you. Senator Cassidy. I think you're on mute.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, I'm not. I'm not on mute. You can't hear me?
You were muted. You're now good. Go for it.
Yeah, you're muting me.
Not me.
Like my family, they always attempt to mute me. Anyway, reading till grade 3 or 4. So we've somewhat predetermined a whole class of children to be poor readers. You and I both know that reading well is a prerequisite for most jobs that pay well. My wife has done screening for dyslexia within a prison system and found a very high incidence of those who are inmates read way below high school graduating level. Now, many of those whom you are attempting to reach, I gather, and thank you for doing so, have poor educational kind of background. They haven't graduated from high school. Intuitively, since there is a high incidence of dyslexia among those who drop out, they can't read, they get frustrated, they quit, then I would suspect that you may have a higher percent of dyslexics, particularly severe dyslexic, in your service population, more than the 20%, which is in the general population. So with all that to say, do either of your workforce centers screen for dyslexia upon entrance into your training program?
Senator,
Ms. Johnson, Dr. Ross?
Senator, I will address that first. So currently in our American Job Centers, that screening does not occur. We do work, and there's a physical presence of our partners in vocational rehabilitation. And so once that referral is made, they can then start to consider if there are some extenuating circumstances to help an individual prior to enrollment, prior to assessment. That is not a common skill set that a lot of the folks in our American Job Centers have, but we do rely on our partners to help us in that work prior to sending someone on to any post-secondary or upskilling opportunities.
Do you have a sense of the average grade level of reading ability of someone who's in your job center? You know, do they read on a college level, a high school graduate at 8th grade or 6th grade?
It varies. It varies widely. I will tell you it's not unusual for individuals that come in and take part in assessments before we apply our Title I funding to credential or skill training to have to retake those assessments or need services from our partners in adult education in the literacy space for measurable skill gains prior to moving on. That's not uncommon. And again, we see this particularly with individuals who may have been out of the educational space for some time, and particularly for those who do not have a high school diploma or equivalency.
Dr. Rawls, could you answer those two questions? Do you screen, and what is kind of the mean level of educational achievement among those whom you serve?
No, sir, we do not screen for dyslexia, but what we do strive to do is provide and be very proactive in any types of accommodations for students who are coming into our degree programs. I think something else that's very important for us is being so comprehensive that, you know, it's not just degree college programs, but it's also we provide the adult basic education programs, which provide the opportunity for students to start wherever and essentially in many cases learn to read while they're at college, but keep going further. We certainly probably could do a better job in screening and other forms of services, but our comprehensiveness allows for recovery, and I think that's part of the beauty of community colleges.
Do you have a sense of the percent of your incoming students who are very poor readers?
In terms of the definition of very poor readers, one of the things we've worked on is what we define as college ready, which then does look at the readiness skills of individuals that come in through various testing. Our state's been kind of a model in terms of testing around that, which certainly does get at reading skills. But it's one of the most difficult challenges we face in making those determinations.
Yeah, but no percent. Can you give me a percent of how many read below a high school senior level?
Well, if you did our college readiness, years ago when I was system president, about 2/3 fell below that. The truth is, though, our testing was not very strong and we were over-testing students. And I can't tell you specifically how many are falling below a 3rd grade level. Still too many students come in not reading at the level they need to at college level, and that's why many students, but a smaller percentage, go into than used to years ago our developmental education, and we focus very much on that aspect of our college to make sure that they can catch up in a reasonable amount of time if possible.
Madam Chair, I'm over, so I'll concede after this or yield back my time, in that if dyslexia is the #1 reason for poor reading or even illiteracy, And no fault to these folks, but we're not on a federal level encouraging the screening of dyslexia at every point along the way in which we're trying to capture these folks. I feel like we have program failure. And nothing criticizing these folks. They're doing God's work. Oh my gosh. It's just the children themselves who are being failed by a system which itself fails to go after this particular issue. With that, I yield back, and I thank you all for your good work to our folks.
Thank you. Senator Kane.
Thank you, Chair Murray and Ranking Member Burr. And another thank you, Madam Chair. Today's thank you day for me at all my committee hearings. I'm thanking the staffs who have been working so hard to make these hybrid hearings where witnesses appear both in person and virtually, and somewhat technically unsavvy senators who appear both virtually and in person. The staffs have done a really good job of making these work, and I just wanted to open off with thanking the Help Committee staff.
I totally agree. Thank you.
Dr. Rawls, really good to see you again. We are so sorry you left Virginia to go to North Carolina, but you're like Johnny Appleseed. You're just spreading good CTE wherever you go, and I'm really happy to be with you today. According to some of the DOL data that I've looked at in the sort of a year into this pandemic, we just got significant, sizable workforce challenges, and that's what we're trying to address today. I think the DOL suggests that about 4 million people are still classified as long-term unemployed. They've been out of work more than 6 months, and that total is likely an undercount. We've got the opportunity and the imperative to help unemployed individuals access job training to reenter the workforce, but many of these workers need access to short-term programs that will help them earn credentials and reenter the workforce quickly, particularly older workers who need short-term intents because of the demands that their families and other obligations they have. Community and technical colleges in Virginia and all across the country are really at the forefront of this, working to provide these high-quality short-term programs. And these programs provide post-secondary pathways, but also immediate job skills. In Virginia, Dr. Rawls, as you're very familiar, we have a program called Fast Forward that's offered at community colleges, and it has had very encouraging results. Leading to employment for adult learners and traditionally in this program, kind of non-traditional students, more likely to be older, more likely to be people of color, more likely to be first in the family to be at a college, more likely to be receiving TANF benefits. In each testimony today, folks mentioned the need for federal financial aid to extend to these short-term programs if they're high quality. My colleague Rob Portman and I, together with more than 30 Democrats and Republicans, have a bipartisan bill called the Jobs Act that would extend Pell Grant eligibility to students who attend high-quality programs at community colleges and public institutions. Dr. Rawls, how do you think expanding Pell Grant eligibility to students for enrollment in high-quality short-term programs might open doors both for first-time college students, but also for adult students with families who have faced hardships in this most challenging time?
I very much endorse that proposal and making Pell eligible for quality short-term credentials, because so many students, non-traditional workers and people in the workforce, they need those short-term credentials to get the skills to get a job. And a lot of times they need those jobs to get the further higher education they need to further their career. So to me, it's not as much an either or as it's made out to be. It's really an and we need to work more diligently to make it an and. And I think you can make it more and by providing Pell for short-term credentials. We've been having a skills versus degree debate, and I have frequently heard corporate execs say they don't care about degrees anymore, they only care about skills, only to find out that memo never really reached the HR department. And if we do it the right way, we can do it well in a benefit to our students. You mentioned Virginia, cloud computing, where you can start with short-term credentials in Fast Forward at Northern Virginia Community College. You can start an apprenticeship program in short-term credentials and then move that into the cloud degree, which then moves over through the advanced partnership to George Mason. Same thing in North Carolina. Our BioWorks short-term credential is an entryway into our fast-growing biotech ecosystem in the research triangle. It gets folks the skills they need for that job, but they can bring that into our degree and then on to the university.
Let me just interrupt you for a second and say, I've been a supporter of this Jobs Act for a while. Before the pandemic with this chronic, now long-term unemployment makes it seem even more imperative. But with a President Biden now committed to an infrastructure plan where we will have to train and upskill a significant workforce to do an infrastructure plan of the size we're contemplating, it would seem even more likely that the skills needed to do the infrastructure work are likely to be found in these high-quality short-term programs. We shouldn't wall off those necessary careers from Pell Grant eligibility if we want to get infrastructure done, in my opinion.
I agree. And our degrees need to stack with those high-quality programs so our students don't have to start over. You can start in those workforce skill training programs, third-party assessment, high-quality short-term certification, and then we have to do a stronger job to make sure that they walk into our degrees so that our students aren't stunted, if you will, that they have a ladder that they can keep moving forward, and they always have opportunities for career advancement.
Great. Thank you. Thanks, Chair Murray.
Thank you. I will turn to Senator Hassan.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair, and our ranking member, Senator Burr. I want to thank all of the witnesses as well for joining us today for a really important conversation on how we can best support workers who are unemployed, underemployed, or who have fallen out of the labor force. And before I start with questions, Madam Chair, I'd like to ask for unanimous consent to enter into the record this statement from the Society of Human Resource Managers about the importance of employer-provided education assistance.
Without objection.
Thank you. Ms. Flynn, I'd like to start with a question to you. Good morning. A workforce strategy I have long supported, first as governor of New Hampshire and now in the Senate, are career pathways programs, and we've certainly talked about those a bit this morning. These programs engage workers who have fallen out of the labor force or to make progress in their career through industry partnerships with higher education so participants can receive educational credentials while also earning an income. I recently reintroduced the Gateway to Careers Act with Senators Young, Kane, and Collins. That's a bipartisan bill to expand career pathways as well as provide wraparound supports for learners who face barriers to completion, supports like help in accessing affordable housing or covering transportation costs. Do you agree that supporting career pathways is an important investment to help our most vulnerable workers re-enter or advance in the workforce?
Thank you, Senator. I wholeheartedly agree with that. At Jobs for the Future, we have been supporters of career pathways now for several decades, and we're proud to support the bill that you mentioned. I think that particularly now as we recover from the pandemic, really ensuring that the individuals, the workers who have been left behind really have that comprehensive set of supports to help them move back into the labor market and along a career pathway to economic self-sufficiency. So I think it's really critical. We have been involved over the years in helping to replicate the IBEST program in Senator Murray's home state of Washington, really looking at how to help low-wage, low-skill workers get on that path to economic advancement. So very much so.
Well, thank you for that. I now have a question to all four of our witnesses, and I'm just going to read it and then go in order here. I often hear from employers that they struggle to find the workers that they need to hire for openings, and certainly Mr. Mendoza has spoken to that this morning. Some of these employers have successfully engaged with community colleges and our state workforce system in New Hampshire to build workforce pipelines to actively recruit and train workers, including through career pathway programs like the ones we just discussed. So to each of you, how important is it for employers to be involved with the development of workforce and education programs to ensure that individuals who complete a program have local job opportunities? And can you speak to how best to do this? And I'll start with Ms. Flynn and then go to Dr. Rawls, and then we'll go to our two witnesses who are with us remotely.
I would say it is absolutely critical to have employers deeply involved in the system and to help really co-design the solutions that are being put in place. You know, a lot of that activity obviously needs to happen kind of at the regional labor market level. But I feel that as we look at future policy change and legislation, finding ways to make that engagement easier for employers, I think is really key, particularly large-scale employers who are trying to engage, community after community. How can we help to streamline that process for them? How can we also be looking at feedback loops where employers can more easily provide their feedback to community colleges and other training providers on, kind of the quality of the skills that they're seeing in the graduates.
Well, thank you. Dr. Rawls?
It's absolutely vital because the employers have to set our targets and we have to hit those targets. And if we don't, then it means that our students don't have the opportunity for the economic prosperity which they come to us for. So it's absolutely vital.
Thank you. Mr. Mendoza, would you like to address this?
Yes, thank you very much, Senator. Employers have to be flexible also and willing to think outside of the box. And that means being willing to accommodate different pathways and different interests that people have. And that's something that has been really important to Optimax as far as taking the non-traditional pathway. There's not a one-size-fits-all approach. So as an organization, we have to be willing to incorporate multiple different types of people and disciplines within this type of infrastructure.
Thank you very much. Ms. Thomas?
Thank you, Senator. Yes, I absolutely agree that employer input is vital. After all, with any of the training, whether it's career pathways or other structured programs, employers are really the validators of the rigor of those programs because this will be their workforce. And so it's critical for us to position ourselves to be flexible so when employers provide that input, we can co-design and co-architect programs that are meaningful to employers for workforce, not just for today, but for the future as well.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Turn to Senator Smith.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I'm glad to be with you. We have a bunch of committee hearings going on today, so I appreciate this chance to join you. I have a question that I'd like to ask Ms. Thomas. So the COVID-19 pandemic has highlighted so clearly the crucial role of the public health workforce. Julie Whitcomb, who's a community health services manager from Watonwan County Public Health Department, said this to me, and I think it makes so much sense. She said, I often say, you know, public health is doing a good job when we aren't in the news. When you hear about outbreaks such as lice in schools and tuberculosis, when you don't hear about outbreaks in schools and tuberculosis, for example. The reality is that a strong public health system depends on a strong, talented workforce to make it all work. But nearly half, I understand, of the public health workforce is considering leaving in the next 5 years. 22% will retire. 25% are leaving for other reasons, including lower wages and competition with the private sector, or even geographic challenges. And I've also heard from a lot of public health departments in Minnesota that the loan forgiveness programs are really crucial for making public health a more viable career choice. So, Ms. Thomas, could you talk a little bit about the challenges that you've seen when it comes to retaining a public health workforce and how the loan forgiveness programs can help recruit and retain this workforce?
Thank you, Senator. And yes, certainly our public health care workers are essential to our nation for so many reasons. And yes, we've seen challenges and oftentimes the time it takes for someone to be an RN, for example, and the pathway progression toward that occupation. Loan forgiveness would be huge because often when we see individuals who have an interest, even starting in the secondary level, if they have an interest, you think about the runway that it takes to become skilled, trained, degreed in this profession. For those who are particularly facing barriers as it is now, it's more than sometimes they can often imagine. And so really breaking it out in these career pathways and in these start-stops, it allows individuals to experience, take part in public education and healthcare without being committed to a longer progression. And so in other words, it may start as just sort of a frontline personal care attendant or something of those sorts, and they learn and gain experience. And then the hope for a more robust experience in public health begins to emerge. And so loan forgiveness takes away that barrier. So someone who's always wanted to be a nurse, for example, or a doctor, but didn't think that it was possible because of where they are, it now provides an opportunity and an open pathway for individuals to begin to embark and seek on a career in public health. And so it is a challenge. We obviously need more workers. I spoke earlier about apprenticeship. These programs, again, work-based education in public health is critical, and we need more apprenticeship programs that allow for a faster progression to be able to create workers that we know hospitals and other organizations so vitally need.
Yes. So this is a strategy not only for recruiting and retaining workforce, but also for recruiting and retaining a diverse workforce, which is such a great need because we know so clearly that a public health workforce that is connected to community is going to be more trusted, more just able to do a better job in so many ways. I appreciate that very much. I want to just mention that I have a bill with Senator Booker that would provide education loan repayment assistance to people who work at the state, local, or tribal public health departments. And this bill would provide the tools that we need to build this kind of sustainable workforce, a diverse workforce that is really ready to address any public health crisis. And I think this past year, 14 months has really demonstrated what a crucial need this is right now. Thank you. Madam Chair, I will take back the rest of my time. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Can I just say to any of our senators who would like to be at the committee hearing, can you let us know if you're going to be here? I know there's a number of hearings this morning and everybody's trying to turn schedules around. We just want to make sure we don't exclude anybody. So if you are there, please get on board. Senator Burr?
Madam Chairman, if we don't have anybody queued up, I know some are on their way. Could I ask one additional question?
Absolutely.
If nobody's queued.
Great.
Dr. Rawls, our committee's working on expanding apprenticeships. And I'm sort of proud of the work that North Carolina's community colleges have done on this space, including the industry-recognized apprenticeship programs. Can you share more about apprenticeship programs in North Carolina?
Apprenticeship in North Carolina is growing and growing rapidly. About 3 years ago, the system moved into the community college system. That allowed the connection between the workforce training and apprenticeship for the related training in North Carolina, and you can see it both in the numbers of students or the numbers of apprentices, which have grown significantly, and the broadening to beyond the traditional apprenticeship areas of construction and manufacturing to many other sectors. In our county, we're proud our county commissioners saw this as a vital opportunity to connect more students to prosperity through apprenticeship. They've provided special funding to our college so that we can go and help facilitate companies to become registered apprenticeship companies, as well as provide the related training free of charge, tuition free at Wake Tech. And so we're seeing very large number growth. We just had a signing ceremony just a couple of weeks ago with 50 new apprentices. And what's so important about it, I think, is the opportunities it provides for students who may not have those opportunities otherwise to get experience, to get into a hiring scenario they would not be in. We have an amazing story of a student who grew up as a foster youth, and through work-based learning, it wasn't a formal apprenticeship, but through work-based learning with Lenovo, and in our computer programming degree, she was a widow with 5 kids, and now she's a team lead at Lenovo. And those are the kinds of programs, work-based learning and apprenticeship, that give students like this student, Tiffany Harrell, that opportunity that they would not have otherwise.
Great. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I'll go to Senator Rosen and then to Senator Tuberville. So Senator Rosen?
Thank you, Chair Murray and Ranking Member Burr, for holding this hearing today, for your commitment to a bipartisan collaboration on a workforce package. We certainly need it, because as Nevada and the nation begin to recover from the worst unemployment crisis in living memory, I'm glad this committee is focused on creating jobs and training workers to fill all the positions so we can get all Americans back to work. But I'd like to speak a little bit about advanced manufacturing and cyber jobs. So Mr. Mendoza, before the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic, Nevada was among the leading states in advanced manufacturing with 16% annual growth. Despite this growth, many training gaps remain. It's why I introduced the Advanced Manufacturing Jobs in America Act, bipartisan legislation that would create a pilot program connecting colleges, workforce boards, and manufacturers to facilitate advanced manufacturing training programs. In light of the pandemic, I am pleased that Western Nevada College has helped fill some of these gaps by offering the Manufacturing Technician Certificate, which includes skills training and advanced manufacturing. It's free to any Nevadan who's been laid off due to COVID-19. And I'm glad that the Biden administration has called for additional investment in this field. So, Mr. Mendoza, as someone appointed to advise President Biden on manufacturing policies, I look forward to working with you on these issues. Could you speak to the importance of training both unemployed and existing workers so that they have the skills necessary to compete for those good-paying advanced manufacturing jobs?
Thank you, Senator Rosen. Sounds like an awesome program, and our responsibility to grow and develop our existing workforce, is those that find these types of environments exciting is what fuels our growth. Technology is changing so fast that we have to be extremely proactive on this. And employees and potential employees also want the opportunity to continue to grow and evolve in their roles. So having well-structured career pathways, but also opportunities to learn from no experience whatsoever is super important and part of our commitment. And especially industry has to be willing to step up and support this and encourage this. We've talked about a lot of things in here, and that's including understanding the diversity of learning within your existing workforce to being able to onboard and incorporate the entire learning spectrum of potential employees moving forward. So that has been extremely vital to us, and we're looking forward to continuing to partner on specific programs.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that because we want to talk a little bit about the role of minority serving institutions, because we know all too well, again, COVID-19 has exposed disparities in our society across the board in healthcare, education, job opportunities, and access to services. So Ms. Flynn, I was pleased to see that the Jobs for the Future is thinking about the American workforce recovery with emphasis on closing these gaps. So in Nevada, 5 of our colleges and universities are designated as minority serving institutions. So we're very proud of that. But how can Congress and the administration better support MSIs as a provider of workforce training? And how do we connect to Mr. Mendoza's point, how do we connect them with the job creators to be sure that we're filling the needs? We need to create that partnership between training and jobs.
Absolutely, Senator, and I agree that minority serving institutions are a key piece of the recovery puzzle, and I think providing them with the resources and the kind of capacity building that they need to help really build those strong employer partnerships in their communities is critical. Helping them engage more broadly with the public workforce system to most effectively kind of utilize those resources that the system can provide, and really building in strong career navigation for their students and for the leaders of those institutions to really help enable students to make great informed decisions about their career paths. But I think really being intentional about the resources and building those strong connection points is critically important.
Thank you. And I do agree with your word, intentional. We must be intentional about this. We have an opportunity to see who we want to be, who we need to be coming out of this pandemic. And I look forward to creating as many partnerships between the private sector, our universities, and our workforce training as possible. Thank you, Madam Chair. I yield back.
Thank you. Senator Tuberville.
Thank you very much, Chair Lady. Thank you for being here today and testifying. Workforce development has been huge on my agenda for years. I've been in education for 40 years, travel the world, travel the country, trying to help kids get jobs. I will say this, I've noticed, our four-year universities have become businesses instead of education institutions where we get them prepared for a job. It's a shame that that's happened, but again, a business, people have to make a living, but we need to recognize that. And I think to be honest and blunt with you, I think our education system's outdated. I think we need to make some major changes. But that being said, the big deal is we need to train kids for a future workforce. And we need to get them to the point where they know how to use their hands, know how to use their brains, and understand work and work ethic. The one thing that I've noticed in two-year schools is we have got to get them involved in some kind of situation where they learn how to use their hands, not in a two-year school, but in high school. I've gone through thousands of transcripts the last years, and a 12-year system to me is outdated. We don't push kids. We get to the last 11th and 12th grade of the years, and they're taking activity courses, study halls, and we're not preparing them. And I truly believe that we need to teach them something in the last 2 years of their high school. Get them involved in something where they can get interested in, whether it's wood shop, welding, nursing, cooking, and teach that and teach them how to do things like that. Am I on the right track there? Just get both of your opinions.
I think you're on absolutely the right track. I think that really we need to be thinking about pathways that really span from, ninth grade up through sort of grade 14, so the 4 years of high school and 2 years of post-secondary training. Really embedding that high-quality work-based learning in high school is key. How you kind of think intentionally about those kind of career pathways and career progression across those grades. At JFF, we lead an initiative called the Pathways to Prosperity Network, where we're working with states and regions to build those types of systems. I also think we need to be looking at how to continue to address the, I think, outdated and somewhat unfair stigma around career and technical education. So how can we help educate students and parents and school leaders about these great opportunities that are in the skilled trades and other opportunities? And just that, CTE is not what it was when my mother worked in that system back in the 70s. It's a very different system now, and we need to keep pushing for modernization and improvement and agility.
Well, this is my concern. We're coming out of a pandemic, hopefully, and we hear we've got 6-7% unemployment. That's wrong. We've got millions of jobs out there right now. Number one, people aren't looking for jobs. People are sitting at home. But that being said, I'm not worried about those people out there now that are out of school. I'm worried about the kids coming up and being motivated to say, listen, I want to go make a great living. I want to start a business. I want to do something. I want to use my hands. And we've got to start encouraging them. But we're coming out of this pandemic where a lot of people have been virtual. And you can't learn to use your hands virtual. Just watch it on TV and all that. But how are we going to get kids back motivated after this pandemic? Actively, I think we're overlooking that. We're saying, oh, we're just going to open back up and we're going to go back out and put this to a test. Education is the most important thing in this country. That's our future, and we better start getting a handle on that. So how do you think we do that?
I think you're on the right track. I think we have to look for those places where students can apply, not just, learn the theoretical. And I think that's something of what you're talking about. I think also you noted the notion between making the connections between high schools and college and community colleges. When we talk about career pathways or when we talk about ladders at my institution, it's not just our career pathways, it's their career pathways, and that really starts in high school. And so programs like dual enrollment, youth apprenticeship, early college high schools, we have career and college academies, and that also sparks the opportunities for apprenticeship. In North Carolina now, if you start in a youth apprenticeship program, like our manufacturing programs, and you're employed as an apprentice within 6 months of graduating, then you get free tuition. It incentivizes that. And I think those kind of connections are important, and thinking about our pathways, our ladders are not just about within our institutions. They have to cross our institutions. And that's the way I think we have to think about it.
The only thing I worry about, free tuition for junior colleges and really for four-year schools is the part of learning how to go out on your own, how to learn how to be responsible for yourself. If something's free, you don't work as hard. We've all found that out. And I think if you've got skin in the game, then it's pretty hard to quit. It's pretty hard to kick the can down the road. And I think you will both agree, we need kids to learn how to work. That's the number one thing I think we need to do. Thank you very much, Ms. Chairman.
Thank you. Senator Hickenlooper.
Yes, thank you very much, Chair Murray. And thank you for pulling this really astounding meeting together. I can't remember the last time I've heard so many things that just make me want to accelerate in terms of how we address the gaps that we see all around us in terms of the skills that not just kids, but kids of all ages need. I want to ask a question first to Ms. Flynn. Thank you all for your testimony today. Really a wonderful hearing. Ms. Flynn, many small, medium-sized businesses don't really have the resources or the relevant experience on be able to create their own apprenticeship type training programs. and that's why several of us on HELP are working to try and create the Partners Act, which will provide grants to businesses to allow them to get together and build industry-specific apprenticeship programs. How can we do a better job of helping those small businesses be able to access apprenticeships? I think you're aware we have a wonderful program in Colorado called CareerWise. We have a waiting list of businesses, but not as many small businesses as I think we should have.
Yes, Senator Hickenlooper, I think it's a wonderful question. I think there is a lot more that we can and should be doing for small and medium employers, both in terms of registered apprenticeship and more broadly around engaging in workforce programs. I think the CareerWise program that Noel Ginsberg runs in Colorado is a terrific example of that intermediary work, and I know they're also expanding their efforts into New York City. So I think seeing how we can continue to provide additional support for those intermediary organizations, whether that be at a state or a regional level, I think can really help to alleviate some of the administrative burden from small and medium employers. But as you said, I think there's also, if you're not seeing a number of those kind of engaging now, really helping to continue to dispel some of the myths around registered apprenticeship, I think is key. I think that there is still a kind of a thought in this country that it is kind of only around the skilled trades, only involved, with organized labor, et cetera. And so I think continuing to dispel those myths and really talking to employers about how we are building on those long-term traditions, but expanding into new sectors, new occupations, and how the role of an intermediary can really help make that engagement more streamlined and efficient for employers.
And let me just piggyback on that as we get better integration and coordination between various intermediaries in these types of skills training, and maybe even take apprenticeships and expand them so it's not just for kids who would otherwise just be in high school. We also get to that notion of learning lifetime learning, and people being able to get individual credentials, what they call stackable credentials, as you know well. How do we take this moment where we really are focusing on workforce in I think a new and fresh way, and make sure that we can partner with, corporate America and large and small businesses to make sure we get best of practices and create a national system of stackable credentials? Does that seem something that's used to be so far-fetched and now seems somewhat more accessible? How do you feel on that?
I agree. I think that this past year has made that seem more accessible for sure. I think that trends that, 15 months ago we would have been saying were 5, 10, 20 years off are now currently, in front of us in the near term. I do think that really thinking, again, intentionally about creating that type of system to ensure that the stackability is real, that these stacks are actually providing, paths to degrees for students and workers who are seeking those opportunities can actually happen. And as we saw in a recent report from a credential engine, there are over 1 million credentials now in the U.S., and so it is quite a maze of opportunities. And I think the more we can invest in a career navigation system that can help workers and learners navigate that and really determine which paths are high quality will really be important.
No, absolutely. I could not agree more. Again, thank all of the people providing testimony today. Thank you so much, and I look forward. I'm going to read all of your written testimony to make sure that I don't miss anything. Thank you all. I yield back my time. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Senator. I have one additional question, and then I will turn to Senator Burr. Do you have any other questions? Okay, I believe Senator Braun is going to be here. I will notify him. He's got about 1 minute. Ms. Thomas, while we're waiting, the healthcare system has experienced a shortage of home care workers and trained caregivers for some time, and this shortage is expected to get worse as the population ages and more people require these services. Can you share some examples of your agency's work to address the supports that we need to recruit and retain service providers like home care workers for older adults and people with disabilities?
Yes, thank you, Senator. And certainly this is, one entry-level occupation that we tend to see a great need starting to arise and has arisen over the last several years. And I'll go back to an earlier comment that I made regarding those who have interest in the healthcare industry, but maybe are not ready to take the full leap into some of the nursing degrees. Through career navigation, we're able to help individuals really take the first step, the first rung on the ladder to really explore opportunities as home health aides and personal care aides. What we find is particularly a barrier for this group is because of the salary structure, childcare, and other supports are often needed to do that. But we do find an interest for those who are wanting to really start this as a first phase in the healthcare industry. So we work a lot, particularly with those who are looking for part-time work, who maybe are in school during the day or have small children and need options for someone to watch their children and maybe work at night or overnight. And so this is an ideal population that we can work with to start to at least get them familiar and gain work experience, and then look for opportunities to build out that pathway. But that is something that we find there is absolutely a rising need, and we certainly see this as an opportunity to leverage to really expand opportunities in public health workers across our state.
Thank you very much. Senator Burr, you had one additional question?
Just one quick question, Madam Chairman. I'll direct it to our two witnesses that are here, and if those that are virtually with us have anything to add that's not covered, please do. I'm curious, you've mentioned Pell as policies that Congress should consider to better support access to quality short-term training programs. What other things would you like to highlight other than Pell for these short-term programs that would help? Ms. Flynn?
Sure. So in addition to expanding Pell, I think we would look at skill accounts or kind of an expansion of the current individual training accounts under WIOA, since we know that a lot of dislocated workers or working poor would not be eligible for the Pell dollars. So I think looking to how to build upon that current authority within WIOA, but build that out with additional funding, also continuing to really enhance the quality of the eligible training provider list. I think that provider quality is not just, a key question in the short-term Pell debate, but more broadly around how do we ensure that workers and learners are pursuing high-quality programs. We would also look at how to really open up some access to federal dollars for some of the kind of newer non-traditional providers that are out there, some of the for-profit models who have very strong evidence base behind them. So I think being careful not to kind of put all of for-profit providers in a box that they are bad actors, really looking at the issue of quality and how to direct federal funds accordingly.
Dr. Rawls?
Other than Pell, the other primary way in which individuals receive training is through WIOA. I think what we've seen in some of the testimony, the written testimonies identified that there's been pretty significant decreases in funding, and oftentimes the training available through WIOA it becomes rather sparse. So it's a challenge. I think you have to push more connections as much as possible, particularly between the workforce system and the education system. When we look at short-term credentials, I think third-party industry credentials, certifications are important, and I think it's very important for those degree or credentials also to stack into our degrees, because too often job training alone can be siloed and not lead to the opportunities for career advancement. And again, as I said in my testimony, our traditional higher ed degrees are too often inaccessible for students, and we need both. We don't need the either or, we need the and. And I think also community colleges are key in that. Too often we're treated just as another provider, when I think we're also a very unique backbone to the workforce and the training system in the United States. And I think some of the funding supports like the TAC grants we had before and others are going to be vital to standing up what I believe is the training backbone and the educational backbone for many of these individuals throughout the United States through America's community colleges.
Have they missed anything that our virtual witnesses would like to add?
Senator, I would just like to add just one thing. We talked about sort of the nature of the individual training accounts and the funding being somewhat limited, but also not just the availability of the skill training itself, but the worker supports that come along with that. We look at things like transportation, for example, particularly in rural communities, where it may not be immediately accessible to get to a training site. So worker support expansion will be critical in the context of when we're looking at skill training to make sure that it's actually a package that we can offer to individuals looking to undertake those options.
Thank you, Madam Chairman.
And well, I think Mr. Mendoza wanted to add something.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Senator. It's critical for us that we continue to have the opportunity to upskill our workforce, and using our industry partnership models to continue to partner, to continue to provide opportunities for potential employees and our existing employees is really important to our continued growth. And not having that is going to be an issue. As I indicated, we provide 1,000 hours of training a month because we have to. And we need continued support so that we can continue making sure that we can meet the expectations, both of our existing workforce, but also our customers. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much. Senator Braun, you've arrived in the nick of time. You get the last word. Go.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Something I really going to enjoy having the last word on. I can't tell you how much I wrestled with this subject prior to becoming a U.S. Senator. Started a little business that was so small I never had to worry about it because I didn't have enough employees. But when it became a national company over many, many years, after serving on a school board for 10 years, trying to wrestle with how we better the feeder system of proper training to get into the pipeline. I come from a city and county, the lowest unemployment county in town generally, month after month in normal times. Go home, travel the state. I can't get away from workforce development, CTE, education in general. I want to give you a little example of how I wrestled with it as a state legislator. For one of the 3 years, I was on the education committee. And my brother was head of our workforce development within the state, biggest manufacturing state per capita, always a low unemployment level. I simply said that I do not need more 4-year degrees. We export twice as many as we use in Indiana. The whole system was being stigmatized, was being guided towards more of what we don't need. And I made such a point of it. My brother was even there that day. I was off the education committee the next year. I think that's might have been the reason. We need, in my opinion, better guidance with parents involved when kids are 8th graders so that they don't get into the system being pushed into a misguided future without knowing the options. Nothing against 4-year degrees, but we just don't need them in many businesses. We need better skills coming out of high school. Is there enough of that happening currently in your mind? And is higher ed, just like in my state, actually saying one thing, actually guiding otherwise at the secondary level, and still getting results to me that aren't as good as they should be with as much money as we're spending on it? Any of the witnesses could weigh in on that mouthful.
I'm happy to start, Senator, and I couldn't agree more. To me, one of the top priorities in looking at workforce reform in our country is investing in designing a true high-quality national career navigation system. I think that whether it is students in 8th grade, their families, whether it's high school students who are looking at their post-secondary options, whether it is a long-term unemployed individual who is looking to get back in the labor market, as it stands right now in our country, we do a terrible job of providing those individuals with the information that they need on what is the best bets for them. You know, how do they think about their future? I'm here with my daughter today, who's an 11th grader, but I remember when she came home in about 8th grade, knowing what I do for a living, and she said, "Mom, no one talks to us about jobs," you know, and I think that that is too true, right? I think that too often the issue of careers is left behind. It is secondary, and it is not where I think it should be at the center of these education conversations throughout a student's pathway.
Senator, I think something you're talking about that resonates with me is something we always struggle with, and we call it the interest gap, you know, knowing the job opportunities that are there and sometimes the lack of student interest or parent interest in the pathways to those jobs. I think we have to take different approaches. I think we have to, you know, we have to step back and realize that we still think about college and higher ed being traditional when most students are non-traditional. I think we have to be non-traditional in our thinking about what we mean by career and technical education, and you know, too often the rhetoric is greater than the resources in that regard. We have to step up in that regard. Our college is trying to do that. You can see that in our facilities, not making our career technical facilities at the back part of the college, but putting them right up front and using them as attraction for students. Being able to, I think, ladder students again, not just thinking about our career pathways that are just at our college or just in this program, because you can receive tremendous opportunities by non-traditional pathways. We talked earlier about the manufacturing pathways where you can start in high school as a youth apprentice, come to us in a 2-year degree, but you can transfer that degree to ECU and have tremendous opportunities at East Carolina coming out in management in those regards. Same thing with automotive. We just worked out an articulation for our automotive students in technical programs, but to go to Northwood University and actually go into management. So we've got to step back and think differently about what we have too often thought about too traditionally.
Madam Chairman, could I just offer an example of where I think Senator Braun's just talked about? In one county in North Carolina, the school system offers for 10th, 11th, and 12th graders an automotive option, as well as some other career options. Over 200 students constantly are enrolled in that automotive piece. And upon graduation from high school, every student is offered a job somewhere close to that home county with a starting salary in excess of $35,000 for an automobile dealership. To the student who wants to go further than that with an additional year somewhere, they'll be hired by the Mercedes, BMW dealerships somewhere in the Southeast, making over $100,000 a year starting salary. This sense that expertise are only out of our head versus out of our hands, they prove to be wrong. It's just a very difficult thing to export from where it is to every community across the state, Scott, and across the country. But I think community colleges, as they recognize that, become a little more traditional in the offerings that they have, and they begin to offer those programs that provide a job on the other end, like we saw out of high school. But I think it gets right at your heart of your thing.
Thank you very much. That will end our hearing today, and I do want to thank all of our colleagues and witnesses, Ms. Flynn, Ms. Thomas, Dr. Rawls, Mr. Mendoza. Very productive hearing. We appreciate it. We do have an urgent challenge ahead of us when it comes to tackling the jobs crisis that is caused by this pandemic and rebuilding our economy stronger and fairer. As this discussion today showed, strengthening our workforce programs to better support workers can play a key role in that effort. I know my colleagues on both sides of the aisle are interested in getting this done. I'm hopeful that working together we can turn this bipartisan support into bipartisan solutions. So for any senators who wish to ask additional questions, questions for the record will be due in 10 business days, Tuesday, May 4th at 5 p.m. Hearing record will remain open until then for members who wish to submit additional material for the record. And this committee will next meet tomorrow, Wednesday, April 21st, to mark up the nominations of Julie Sue to be Deputy Secretary of Labor, Cindy Martin to be Deputy Secretary of Education, and James Quall to be Undersecretary of Education. And this committee will meet on Thursday, April 22nd at 10 a.m. in Dirksen 430 for a hearing on protecting U.S. biomedical research. that, the committee stands adjourned.